The Sahara Desert. It is a place that does not just kill you, it erases you. In 1994, Mauro Prosperi arrived here for the Marathon des Sables. It is known as the toughest foot race on Earth, 250 kilometers across the blistering dunes of Morocco. Mauro was in peak physical condition. He was a machine. But on the fourth day, the machine met a monster. A sandstorm hit. This was not just wind. It was a wall of abrasive dust that turned day into night. For 8 hours, Mauro was trapped in a vortex of sand. It was so thick he could not see his own hands. He huddled in a sleeping bag, feeling the dunes move beneath him. When the wind finally stopped, the world was different. The trail was gone. The markers were gone. The other runners were gone. Mauro Prosperi was standing in the center of a silent, golden void. He kept moving under a sky that looked like molten brass. But in the Sahara, movement without water is a slow death sentence. The heat was not just a temperature, it was a physical weight. By the end of the second day, his final liter of water was gone. The dehydration began to dismantle his body from the inside out. His tongue swelled until it felt too large for his mouth. His throat felt like it was lined with broken glass and sandpaper. Every swallow was an agonizing struggle against his own anatomy. His vision began to blur, turning the dunes into shifting, golden ghosts. He started to see things that were not there, shimmering lakes that vanished as he drew near, ghostly voices calling his name from behind the crest of the dunes. On the third day, a real shape finally emerged from the haze. It was an abandoned Muslim shrine, a marabout, lost in the sands. For a moment, a surge of adrenaline gave him a false sense of joy. He scrambled toward the stone structure, praying for a well or a hidden spring. But the shrine was a tomb of dust and silence. There was no water in the old stone basins. There was no food hidden in the shadows. Only the scorched earth and the relentless, blinding glare of the sun. He was trapped in a stone oven with no escape. A colony of small bats hung from the ceiling, watching him with dark eyes. This was the moment he realized the marathon had turned into an execution. This was no longer a competition for a medal or a record. It was a primitive, desperate fight against the Reaper himself. Despair began to breed a very specific and visceral kind of horror. Mauro stared at the ceiling, watching the bats huddle in the crevices. To survive another hour, he had to do the unthinkable. He reached up with trembling hands and caught them, one by one. He felt their tiny hearts beating against his salt-crusted palms. He used his knife to remove their heads, his hands shaking from weakness. He tilted his head back and drank their warm blood directly from their bodies. It was a metallic, salty liquid, but to him, it was more precious than gold. It was the only moisture left in a world made of fire. He forced himself to eat their raw, stringy meat. He chewed slowly, fighting the urge to vomit, forcing his throat to open. His body was screaming for help, his organs beginning to shut down. To supplement the blood, he began to save and drink his own urine. It was a bitter, toxic cycle that only delayed the inevitable. He spent days inside that shrine, watching the sun crawl across the floor. Twice, he heard the distant hum of a rescue plane in the vast sky. He scrambled outside, his skin burning, and fired a distress flare. He watched the red light arc into the sky, screaming for them to see him. But in the blinding, white-hot glare of the Sahara sun, the pilot saw nothing. The engine noise faded until it was replaced by the terrifying sound of the wind. Something deep inside Mauro's mind finally snapped. The silence of the desert became a deafening roar of hopelessness. He took the clotted wounds as a sign from a higher power. If the desert refused to let him die, he would force it to let him live. He gathered his remaining strength, which was nothing more than a flickering candle. He crawled out of the shrine on his hands and knees, squinting at the blinding horizon. He began to walk toward the distant blue mountains, guided by a primitive instinct. For 5 more days, he was a skeleton draped in sun-damaged, leathery skin. He covered over 200 kilometers in a trance-like, out-of-body state. He found a few bitter roots to chew on, and even some insects to stay alive. He was no longer Mauro Prosperi, the Olympic athlete. He was a ghost walking through the dunes, a shadow wandering in the light. Every step was a miracle of willpower over biology. He had crossed the border from Morocco into the forbidden wilderness of Algeria. His eyes were nearly swollen shut from the salt and the glare. His lips were cracked and bleeding, his tongue like a piece of dry wood. Finally, near a dry riverbed, a young nomad girl spotted him. She did not see a man. She saw a creature from an ancient nightmare. She ran to her elders in terror, shouting that a spirit was walking in the heat. The Tuareg nomads brought him into their tent and gave him drops of goat milk. When the Algerian military finally arrived, they were horrified by what they saw. He had lost 15 kilograms of his body weight. His internal organs were scarred and on the very edge of total collapse. His skin was burnt to a deep, dark purple, but the light in his eyes had not gone out. Mauro Prosperi had cheated death twice in a single week. Once from the cruelty of the nature, and once from the edge of his own blade. The recovery was not a simple journey. It was a long, agonizing battle that lasted for months in a hospital bed. His body had forgotten how to be human. His digestive system was so damaged that he could only be fed through a silver spoon, one drop of water at a time, one small piece of food at a time. Doctors and scientists from all over Europe came to study him. They called him a medical miracle, a freak of nature. They could not understand how a heart could keep beating with such thick, salty blood. But while his body was healing, his mind was still lost in the dunes. He suffered from night terrors, waking up screaming, feeling the sand in his throat. Most men would have cursed the Sahara. Most men would have spent the rest of their lives as far away from the sun as possible. But Mauro Prosperi felt a strange, magnetic pull. He felt that he had left a piece of his soul back in that stone shrine. He felt that the race was not over until he crossed the line on his own terms. Years later, against the advice of his family and his doctors, Mauro did the unthinkable. He returned to the Sahara Desert. He stood once again on the same starting line in Morocco. He looked at the horizon, at the same golden trap that nearly killed him. This time, he was not afraid. He ran the same path, past the same dunes, with a heart full of fire. When he finally crossed the finish line, the world cheered. But for Mauro, it was a silent victory. It was the moment he reclaimed his life from the hands of death. He proved that a man is not defined by his scars, but by his resilience. Once you have stared into the absolute heart of the void and survived, there is nothing left on this earth that can break you. Mauro's story is a monument to the human spirit. It teaches us that even when we are at our lowest point, even when our own blood refuses to flow, there is a spark inside us that can never be extinguished. The Sahara is vast, ancient, and powerful, but the human will is the only thing tougher than the desert. And in the end, Mauro Prosperi walked out of the flames, not as a victim, but as a legend.